We like to call it the Supernatural Hour. And now, our hosts.
So I did run across some old remedies for sleep paralysis.
Ooh, this will be interesting.
We've already heard the modern ones. Are you so excited?
Yeah,
maybe you can use some.
The remedies I've got are a CPAP if you got sleep apnea, sleep hygiene, go to bed at the same time, take your medicines for narcolepsy, and get on an antidepressant if you're dealing with that.
No shock therapy?
Yeah, no electroshock therapy.
Oh.
But I'm excited to hear about these, like, folk medicines.
Oh, you're going to like this.
Oh, yeah.
So back in the day, they used to, and we've talked about Incubus and Succubus before, and I think a long time ago we did an episode where we at least touched on those, and that's something we will get into more in depth at some point, because it's on my list of stuff to talk about. But there was, back in the old days, they would refer to these more as the Incubus and the Succubus, and they said that the cures, and I'm using my air quotations.
We can see that.
Or they can't. Imagine my air quotes. So they said that some of these remedies were more frightening than the sleep paralysis themselves. So there was a Byzantine physician named Paulus Aegineta. Aegineta. I have no idea how that is pronounced. So if you're familiar with that language, sorry. And this is in the 7th century. And he had 7 books on the history of medicine in the 7th century. So, boy, he has no idea what's in store, does he? So in one of these books, he explains that the most common way to treat sleep paralysis, and this is in quotes, bleeding, drastic purgatives, and friction of the extremities.
All right. So I'm assuming this has to do with balancing those humors.
Probably. And he said that he would place the focus on the head as the source of the problem, suggesting that if the above treatment did not work, the cupping and scarification of the throat, a restricted diet, and shaving of the head would cure this issue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cure it for me because I wouldn't report it again.
Yeah, weird. After initial treatment, no one ever complains of sleep paralysis. They're cured. Either that or you're going to start having sleep paralysis episodes about this guy coming and slitting your throat. Jeez.
Your werewolf just changes to the doctor's face.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, weird that everyone was cured after this.
So we're going to fast forward to the 10th century. Okay, so we've got a lot of...
Got 300 years in there, right?
Yeah, 300 years of improvements. And it was a Persian polymath, and his name, again, I'm going to slaughter this, Akhwani Bukhari. And he was subscribed to the ancient theory of humorism, and he believed that nightmares were caused by vapors of phlegm ascending from the stomach to suffocate the brain during sleep. That's where he thought this came from. And so his theory was obviously different than the first fellow's, but his treatment was not a whole lot different. In 300 years, you'd think you'd come up with something a little different, but they just did bloodletting. It's like you can't sleep, or you can't wake up, let's just take all your blood out.
Right. I'm trying to figure out the phlegm thing. Like, I guess, if someone had sleep apnea, you could assume, oh my gosh, they're snoring real bad, maybe there's phlegm back in there, I don't know, but...
Suffocate him with pillow.
Almost made it sound like there's consciousness. The phlegm is trying to suffocate
what are they doing
the brain.
with the blood? Like a dialysis? Like, are they filtering the blood out and then putting
it back?
Oh, no.
It's
it ain't going back in.
There's no
filtering.
filtering.
We're just draining it out and then just...
That's what they did with George Washington.
Right before death. And...
Yeah, don't they just, slit you open and
put it
let
in
you
a pan,
bleed
baby.
over a bowl or something?
Yep.
Rub your face is great.
And you'll feel so much better when you lose consciousness from blood loss.
Yeah.
I feel better already.
Enough blood loss, you'll just pass out and you'll get a good sleep.
And you'll go straight to sleep. No sleep paralysis, guys. Just unconsciousness because you have no blood flow to your brain.
Because you won't be waking up.
All right, so let's move to what they refer to as the Christian era. So imagine the Age of Enlightenment when the paranormal kind of is getting very, very popular. And so they, at this time, thought everything was demonic. Everything's demonic. It's not medical at all. And so they were treated with prayers and exorcisms.
Well, working better.
Uh-huh. And so that's how they treated it.
These weren't like bleeding prayers or
I was gonna say,
We're not-
yeah,
just regular.
Just exorcisms.
sacrifice.
Wow. Okay.
And then there's a fellow named John Bonds. And every time I look at this, I see James Bond. And I'm thinking James Bond didn't happen in 1753. What the heck? John Bond. Not James Bond.
James Bond's grandfather.
Probably
Yes.
a few grades in there. I don't know.
Right.
Grandpa.
So this one's the creepiest, in my opinion, to be very honest with you. So he still called it an incubus, or the demons. He still kind of had that paranormal thought going on.
So an incubus is male and a succubus is female. Is that correct?
Correct.
Should we spend?
We all nodded. Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes, because all of you can hear us nod. What he would do is he would poke the afflicted person with a pin or shake them to a wakeful state, which is probably the scariest thing you could do to someone temporarily immobilized in a hallucinatory state, other than maybe bloodletting. But, you know,
They're already terrified and can't move, so you go in there and just shake them a bunch.
let's just bring your nightmare to life. you're imagining vampires? Let's just poke you in the neck with a pin a few
quick,
times.
poke them with a pin.
Love it.
Let's finish out this whole
Oh.
dream sequence.
Still not moving yet, huh? Just keep going. It's gonna break. Give it time. Go.
Love it.
Yep, that was his story. So yeah,
Just it's a shake awake system. Just go, wake up.
just go at it. So you know, I think I would much rather have a doctor say, you know, have you tried going to bed every night at the same time?
Yeah, let's start with that. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm really glad I didn't live back then when it comes to medicine, because they did creepy stuff.
We were making pretty good progress getting into the whole, say prayers kind of thing, and then we took a little bag there. But
Just gonna jab you with a pin.
and now it's like, meh.
Now,
No
didn't
big
you
deal.
say you had some stories?
I do. I have some stories. You're going to make me get my magic glasses on.
I've got my magic.
I know,
Mine
so
are
I
sitting on
can
the end of my
see.
nose, so I think
I-
I'm about 90
They
years
just
old.
look like regular reading glasses to me.
I've been trying to do that, like the whole librarian look, looking over. I'm not
sexy.
really good
This is
at
my
that.
sexy librarian look. It's not my granny look.
There you go.
They used to call me Granny Cinnamon. I hated that.
Why did you even
So-
bring it back up?
Because I've got my nose on. I've got my glasses on. See, today would warrant it. Today would warrant being called Granny Cinnamon. They're not here.
We have Reddit user Junior756, and he says he needs some help to see if this is sleep paralysis, and this is kind of where we talked about before. Because he says, one night I was getting ready to go to bed, and I was closing my eyes and ready to sleep, and 1 minute later, I heard footsteps coming closer to me, and I felt like someone was on me, and felt like they were behind me, watching me sleep, but I was wide awake, but eyes closed, and I could move still, but I didn't want to because I was afraid, and my heart was racing and beating fast, so I just opened my eyes and moved and turned my light on quick and didn't feel scared no more. But every time I wanted to close my eyes to go to sleep again, I felt afraid to sleep again because of the sleep paralysis. So that was kind of
Oh.
where we kind of talked about, like, he wasn't even asleep yet. He was just kind of thinking about it. So,
I've got your answer already.
okay, go for it.
This is not sleep paralysis by definition, because he could still move.
Right,
Okay.
Paralysis would imply you were paralyzed.
right.
Well, what he's having is what's called a hypnagogic hallucination.
Okay,
So a hypnagogic hallucination is a hallucination you have just prior to falling asleep. And so,
So would that include, you know, when you're just falling asleep, and then it feels like your bed just dropped about 10 feet?
yeah, that shaking awake thing, I'm not sure if that's considered a hallucination. It's a really odd sensation of falling. I guess that would be hallucination in a sense, because you have a perception that's not real, right?
Because I've had that happen probably a dozen times in my life.
So that's probably a type of hypnagogic. Hypnopompic is when you're waking up. Hallucination. I'm pretty sure I've got this correct. I'll double check.
well,
But
I have the definition
Oh.
because there was some doc
If
that
he gets it
sent me
wrong,
out this
you
little
can-
list.
Send hate mail to Doc.
that's right.
Hypnagogic or let's see, visual.
Okay.
Hypnagogic or let's see, the occur of the transition from wakefulness to sleep
is hypnagogic. Yep.
is hypnagogic.
So
and
this is
sleep
a-
to wakefulness is hypnopompic.
This is a hypnagogic hallucination that this person is having.
And so the other one that I ran across, while there were different things that we can confuse as sleep paralysis, was delirium.
Mm-hmm.
So delirium is an abrupt change in the brain that causes mental confusion and emotional disruption. It makes it difficult to think, remember, sleep, pay attention, and more. You might experience delirium during alcohol withdrawal, or after surgery, or with dementia. So when I read that one hit home for me because I just a few weeks ago had a colonoscopy. And when I went in for my colonoscopy, when they were getting ready to knock me out, the nurse goes, "Oh, a lot of people really enjoy this. And this is like a medication vacation. And you're going to get a really good rest and really enjoy it. Like, good for you." And I'm, okay, that sounds great. So I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and the anesthesiologist is there, and his name is Ben. And I'm like, "Thanks, Ben. I can't wait for this vacation." Well, when I woke up crying harder than I've ever cried, like my dad had just died, type of a thing. And they could not console me for hours. I made them reach underneath my bed and grab my phone so I could FaceTime my son because I didn't trust them. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know what I was doing there. And I certainly didn't just go on a medication vacation.
Well, it sounds like a terrible vacation.
It was a terrible vacation. And I kept asking my nurse, well, what did you do to me that I'm remembering this that you don't want me to remember? So when I grabbed my phone and I FaceTimed my son, they're like, "Oh, we're FaceTiming." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, because he needs to see what's going on around here. Like,
This is crazy.
it is. This is crazy, and I don't know if I should be trusting you." So when I read that, I was like, I get it. And I wish somebody would have actually explained that to me, because when I was asking the nurse what happened, he had no freaking idea.
Yeah, so delirium's an interesting thing. Delirium is always based in some type of medical or physiologic event, right? Whether that's infection or whether that's medication or whether it's something that has a medical root to it. In fact, this happens a lot in the emergency department. When I work, I'll have patients that come in that have psychosis, for example. And one of my jobs as a medical physician, as a medical doctor, is to rule out delirium as a cause. Because if they have delirium, a psychologist isn't going to be able to help that, right? If this person is acting crazy because they have a terrible infection, or they have encephalitis, an infection that's affecting their brain or something like that, I have to be certain that their condition is rooted in psychosis. It's rooted in a psychogenic behavioral health component as opposed to a medically derived problem.
Right.
And medications, same thing. They can make people act funny. I use a medicine called ketamine quite a bit for sedations when we're setting bones in people who have fractures. And it's an interesting thing. Kids do really well with it. Usually they'll have this medicine is an amnestic. It causes amnesia. It's also hallucinogenic. People use it on the street under the name Special K. I had an old grandma say, "Don't give me Special K," and I laughed so hard in the emergency department. And I thought, how did she know this stuff was called Special K? She said, "Don't give me that Special K." But what it does is it creates amnesia. It's a pain medicine, but it also creates hallucinations. And it's dose dependent. Depending on how much you're given can actually affect the type of hallucinations that you have. In kids, like I said, most of the time they have very pleasant hallucinations. It's like rainbows and unicorns and cotton candy, and they're usually like, when they're coming out of it, they're smiling and laughing and blowing kisses. I've had a couple of patients. I've had to use it on adults, which I don't love to do, but sometimes it's the best medicine. I had a guy come out screaming that he was in a trapezoid.
Oh.
And I'm not quite sure how you end up in a two-dimensional object, but he was, and he just sat there screaming, "I'm in a trapezoid, I'm in a trapezoid." And he did not love the effect of the medication, obviously, because he remembered coming out of it. I've had people tell, alien abduction stories while they were on ketamine was another thing that I've seen people express. But this is all drug delirium is what this is, or drug psychosis if you take long-term stuff like amphetamines. We get people that will sometimes come in that are not in touch with reality, and they're experiencing drug psychosis, which is also, a big differentiator for us. Is a psychiatrist isn't going to help somebody who's having psychosis related to drug use. The answer to that is stop using drugs, right? But your experience sounds a lot like you had a bad trip I guess I would say.
That's exactly what the nurse told me verbatim. You just had a bad
Yeah,
trip.
you got into some special K or something,
Yeah.
and you had a bad trip. What
That's
did-
hilarious. You use those words as that's what he. And I was like, well, I need to understand then. What was this bad trip?
I'm an ER doc. I use all sorts of words.
That's hilarious.
Especially medical terms like wonky. I'll use wonky sometimes. But
That was on page
Love
what
it.
of
That's
the.
right. When I started my residency, we learned to say wonky.
I use that word sometimes.
Yeah.
Or goopy. Or gunk. Yeah, I say all sorts of things. People are like, what? This guy's a doctor? Sure I am.
And there's a code for that.
There's the certificate on the wall.
I'll go ahead and diagnose you with goopy eye, and we'll call it a day.
Love it.
You've been listening to the Supernatural Hour at AdvancedParanormal.com. The Supernatural Hour is part of the Radio Ronin network found at RadioRonin.com. Copyright 2021 by Advanced Paranormal Services.